some of these dozy companies had loads of underutilized assets, and they'd forgotten one of the first rule of money, absolute first and only rule of money. A euro is an orphan, has no parents, has no relatives. It has no memory, it has no conscience. It goes where it's wanted. If you are not able to make a return on that euro, it's going to move. Don't say it's not. I mean, governments don't understand that.
So, John Teeling, thank you very much for joining me.
Good morning. I'm very happy to do so.
And thank you very much for having me here to your office, where you've been for how many years, did you say?
Since it opened in 1969.
Could we start a little bit before that time, where you grew up, what your parents did, what they were like, and just I suppose a little bit about your childhood and where you came from?
I'm from Marino originally, which is not too far from here, about 3 miles from here. I grew up there for the first 7 or 8 years, then moved to Hollybrook Road, which is less than a mile from here, and stayed there until I got married and came back from the States. And I've now moved, firstly, about 300 yards from here, and secondly, about a mile from here. So in the entire, and my family before us were in that area. So originally from Marino. My mother was a young housewife. My father had been very unwell a lot of his life and didn't really get started in business until he was probably about 28 or 29. He had rheumatic fever, which impacted on the heart of people then. And he set up as a commission agent selling insurance policies, life insurance policy for the Royal Liver. Did okay with that. Then he got involved in essentially something that only your oldest and poorest listeners will remember. He would give out notes. Some of his customers, it was mainly from Northside, not well off. The life insurance policy, you paid £1 a week so that they'd bury you when you died. And they had no money, and certain companies would allow you as a rep to give a note, particularly if you wanted a bag of coal, 100 weight of coal. And she would ring up, and the payment, she would give the note and they would deliver you the bag of coal. You could also do it for clothing and things like that. And my father then would collect the money on a weekly basis. And that morphed into 3 or 4 of them set up a tiny legal money lending company. And he then, they split up and he ran that. But then he died very young. He died in his mid-40s, leaving a 37-year-old widow and 4 kids. And my mother, full markstrow with no education, having come from the country, and had to start. There was no money, so it was all commission in the insurance, and if he didn't collect it, the small was a very tiny business. So she got the book of the agency, worked on it with help. Myself at 14 did, and then the small money lending business had an office that was open a couple of hours a week, and we worked in that. And so it was a great experience if you're 14, Yeah, and it had to be done. So that lasted until 1985. My 2 brothers did the same after me in running it.
What were you like in school? And did that, I suppose your dad dying at such a young age, did that have an impact on you at the time? Do you remember?
Of course, it has a huge impact on you. Shock and horror. It was sudden death, literally in front of the kids. Heart attack, not unusual 60 years ago, unfortunately. Rare enough now, thank God. And my father, I also had rheumatic fever, so you didn't play sports. My father and latterly my mother had a fierce dedication to education. Really, in fact, maybe too much, and it might have passed down through me to my kids as well, my poor grandkids, and insisted on us doing well. I was in Joey's in Fairview, a year Marino first, and then moved to Joey's in Fairview, which was Skull Lawn Gaelic for a couple of years. And I was a good student, luckily. Now, I didn't do anything else. I was also, I suppose, a nerd. But I was a good student. I had a talent, and I had a particular talent for numbers. I was good at mental arithmetic, which, again, only your older people would know, that you had to do your 8 times tables and stuff like this and be able to multiply and divide, and I could do it really well. I could still, at this age, probably do multiplication and division as quick as some people can do in the calculator. I was good at that. Yeah, I was just a talent. I wish I could sing, or I wish I could play football for Dublin, but that's what I was good at. So I went through secondary school, and I got a university scholarship. It's always been lucky. You have to be lucky. There were 48 university scholarships that year, and I got the 48th, which couldn't be given to me because it needed to be 5 females. And a couple of people didn't take it, so I got it laterally. I did commerce with it, much to the disgust of the Christian Brothers. Absolute disgust. They arrived on force to my poor mother, who supported me, saying, do medicine or engineering or something useful. And indeed, doing a BCom in UCD at that time, this will probably get me into trouble. I was kind of known as the gentleman's C degree for the rich and thick. Which it really was.
And why was that? Is because business at the time in Ireland?
It wasn't regarded as an academic subject. Even the Harvard Business School is on a separate campus. It's not in the main, but all that time. And the MBA was only set up about 1966. So we were really an adjunct, a big adjunct of the arts faculty. And indeed, in your first year subjects, I did first arts and first commerce. You could do at that time. You had to do Latin, because I was doing arts. God help me. I did geography and I did economics with the first year economics people, same course. It took a long time. The BCom only got out on its own through Michael McCormack later in the 60s and into the 70s. But I always kind of wanted to do business. I would have maybe liked to do medicine. My brother and sister did medicine after me, but I thought the 7 years was going to be too long. And then I eventually spent 11 years in university. So,
what was it about business at that time? Like, can you remember? You were good at maths, but there's so much more to business, obviously, right?
No, I had what I believe now is probably. I'm not so sure it's right. I saw it yesterday in my back garden. My grandson had a couple of friends in there, and they had one of these little tiny motorbikes, a 45cc engine, and they're riding it up and down the back garden, which I have to stop. I can't do that, because they can't put it on the road. They're only 15. And I had one of those. My father had got one, and he was dead. A Peugeot 50cc thing. I used to sell rides on it. And a few things like that. So there was some. I believe that entrepreneurs have things in them. They don't necessarily have to do business. I think they said a long time now they're Harvard or Wharton, can't you? Which says it's Wharton. 1/2% of the people are entrepreneurial, but you don't know where they are or what it is. Now, I think a lot of people self-select business then if they're like that.
Yeah.
So it was like a duck to water to me. I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed college, and it was only in my final year that I managed to kind of knuckle down and try and get a good degree, which you had to do because I didn't come from the proper schools, and we didn't have the proper Dublin 4 contacts. There were very few of us. I think there were very few Christian Brothers boys in the 300 or 400 there. And I think we got first, second, and fourth. A night student got third, and he was also a Christian Brother. So the first 4 places are all, and there was probably only 7 or 8 Christian Brothers boys. It was all Dublin 4.
And you went in, rather than kind of going straight into business, if you like, you went in lecturing in UCD, is that correct?
No, it was kind of a question of what options that you have. I'm not so sure unless you come from, if family opportunities arise for you that you can do, or doors open for you. If you're trying to start from scratch, I actually liked college, and I liked getting good results. So I had a good BCom, a very good BCom. Michael at that stage wasn't Michael McCormack, it was James Meenan, who many people would know was very good to me. And 2 of us got tutorial fellowships, which means we were paid to do an ME Masters in Economics, and we gave tutorials. God help the students. Both of us were the same age. We were both 20. He's actually exactly a month younger than me. His birthday was last week. And literally, God help the students. And that went on. And then scholarship opportunities came up. And I remember a couple of guys said, you should go into business. I got a job offer to go into investment banking, which I probably would have done much better, particularly because I was good at macroeconomics. I really liked the economics of Ireland. I still do. With James Meenan, one of the few people in the classes because he recited from his book. But I thought it was fascinating. I really did, thoroughly enjoyed it. And I applied. At this stage now, I probably would have gone into. At that stage, it was very hard to get into stockbroking. I liked the stock exchange. Hard to get in, even with a master's,
What was it? Why was it so hard to get
because it
in?
was enclosed. It was just much like kind of the top legal profession almost hasn't fully opened yet. Look, that's the way the world is. I probably sound with a chip on my shoulder, and you hadn't, but stockbroking, I think there was probably only one, at most, or two Catholic ones. And I'm not so sure. There was one other guy came back from Canada whom I got close to later on, who was in there. And Northside Christian Brothers scholarship boys didn't get many opportunities to go into those places then. It has changed a bit. I remember one thing not so many years ago. This super bright Trinity Law graduate, but from a very rough background, couldn't get articles. Super first class honours all the way. None of the top law firms would take them.
Is it different in the States where it's much more of a meritocracy? Like I remember years ago reading about a guy. He's a very famous. He's very big in commodities. His first name is Jim. I've forgotten his surname, but he went to Harvard and he said, I want to go to Wall Street. And they said, what are you talking about? It was kind of seen as where people go to kind of punt around, and there wasn't any kind of success at that stage.
I'm not so sure that the stock exchange here wasn't that much different on that. The only, when I started to look at it seriously, which would have been when I came back from Wharton, and was in UCD, that and I applied a very specific model to it. If I'd have stuck to that model, you would have been interviewing me now in Monaco in my villa. That's true. And my youngest son would agree with that. Say, any times I broke the rule, I tend to lose money. Again, Wall Street was very enclosed. Now, is it the States of meritocracy? It is until it isn't. I mean, if you go to Phillips Exeter School and go to Harvard Business School, or Harvard undergraduate, never mind the business school, to Harvard undergraduate, yeah, you're going to get jobs and things like that. The doors will open for you. It's always a question of getting in the door. It's a question of getting the interview. And if you're good enough at an interview, they'll make a place for you. I'm not saying it any derogatory. It just means opportunities are missed for people. I don't know whatever happened to this young woman who had this super law degree. I must try and find out. Yeah.
Yeah. What happened? So what happened then? I suppose. So
remember, why would you be? I wouldn't have had much money. I wouldn't have had money, and I would have found it very difficult to get started. And I probably didn't know what I would start. Actually, it's true. I certainly didn't. So I went to Wharton, where I did finance, mainly MBA in finance. When I was doing the masters, I did a course in finance. There's a couple of guys who were very good, and I picked up the stock exchange, and I picked up Benjamin Graham model at the time, which is the net assets model, and has been my Bible and my gospel. Warren Buffett is a kind of a lapsed Catholic believer in it. He believes in it, but he takes different views. A guy called Templeton was a true believer and has probably made more money than Buffett out of Bahamas. It's more secretive. It's a very simple model, and but none of us stick to it rigidly because we think we're good. So I refined that a bit when I was doing the MBA. And in my second year in the MBA, I started to look at the Irish Stock Exchange doing that. And it was moribund. Now, very little investment was done in the Irish Stock Exchange. There was loads of money in Dublin, but it was all invested in the UK. And that was traditional. Bankers as well, your deposits went to the UK. The banks didn't lend to Irish enterprise. Just didn't. Not sure they are now. But that's why they formed. They set up things like the ICC and ACC, Agricultural Credit Corporation, Industrial Credit Corporation, which was specific to lend to Irish enterprises because the banks wouldn't do it. Now, you can make a very good case for that, and it's not up to the banks to risk their depositors' money. I've always defended them when they do these things, even when it hurt me. So,
can you remember any investment from that time that would have followed this Benjamin Graham?
I went after my very first investment was I had money. I had saved up money during the Masters in Economics to buy a car. I wanted to buy a second-hand MGB GT, and the one I looked at was silver, and remarkably, I haven't got a shirt today, but now I have a silver XK or January. I haven't changed. I am very ridiculous. Yeah, I keep cars, I keep houses, I keep wives. I know. I keep jobs. Yeah,
Offices.
yeah, exactly, absolutely. Again, still the nerd. But I had identified a couple of companies that I thought were undervalued according to this model. And when I was going out to do the MBA, I put the money I had, which was about £1,000 at the time, into two of these companies, one of which was Glen Abbey and the other one which was Tonja McLaughlin, TMG. Yeah, TMG.
What did they do? Can you remember?
Glen Abbey, I remember very well. I went after 3 times. Glen Abbey was a massive clothing company, made clothing in Dublin, and had lots of assets. No profits because labour was too expensive and all that. Now, the Barneses were kind of captains of industry from the Second World War onwards. Tonja McLaughlin was a famous engineering company based here in the North Strand and in Pearse Street, quite big, but again, it was built up behind protective tariffs. And once they did open trade, free trade, they were going to suffer. And I went into both of them. They made me money in the couple of years I was away.
Was money something you wanted to make? Yeah.
Simple answer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me a bit more about it.
I had very specific targets originally. Very specific. I thought I should try and make £1 million by the time I was 40. When $1 million was $1 million now. I didn't make it. Close, but didn't.
Yeah. It's interesting because...
now, it's only a number, by the way. It's not my whole.
Sure.
That was a target. It's like anything, you set a target, but it didn't define my life or what I was going to do.
I was reading about John Templeton.
Temple is the one I mentioned.
Yes, yeah, a few years ago. And he obviously wanted to make money, but he seemed to have this belief that it was kind of, there was something else driving him, like a kind of almost a spiritual. He's a Christian. I'm not sure if he's Catholic, but he's Christian. And he, for example, he said tithing. I know more people who have gotten wealthy from tithing 10% of their income to charitable courses. It's an interesting kind of dualism.
Doesn't surprise me at all. Not remotely. I think the objective in making the money was to try and the imposter syndrome. Every one of us have it, no matter who you are. And if there are ones who don't, because they're nuts. They're not going to make it. I think it's fairly clear. You look at this, is my father being dead, you had to keep proving yourself to your mother. You've heard that probably before, and it's very true. And also prove yourself to yourself repeatedly, and it still happens, and it doesn't go away. It's a very strange thing.
Well, I was going to ask you that, because surely after all the success that you've had over your career so far, that imposter syndrome must have dimmed slightly.
Oh, I hope it has. I think it has dimmed an awful lot. But you'd still look at some of the things and say, geez, I don't know if I could do that. And you shouldn't. You shouldn't. But it was undoubtedly that, and that led to what I did down the road in terms of setting up companies on the basis, hey, look, I'm teaching enterprise and I've never done anything, so you have to do it. And it was only for myself. That was for myself. It wasn't necessarily for the money. Money was stock exchange. I could have just played the stock exchange. 2 phone calls a day at that time. There were no computers, no mobile phones or anything. And in fact, I think they only traded for 2 hours in the morning and 45 minutes in the afternoon. Good life if you're a stockbroker.
In preparation for this, I read that you never got into property because you find collecting rents boring.
Interest to this day.
And I was thinking, it was interesting because the businesses you have gone into have kind of been, to my mind, much kind of riskier businesses. So much larger payoff if they pay off, but kind of less consistency, if you like, maybe over time. No consistencies. Was that what excited you about
yes,
them?
Very much so. And I think that I'm not unusual in this. I think the idea was, and I'm wrong, is, I can beat the odds. That's what it is. Now, nearly gambling, but speculation and things like that. But on the basis I'll apply my superior approach to it and better analytical skills and hard work and reduce the level of risk. Now, that applies to some of the business, and I think some of them were the early ones were easy enough to make money out of. Whiskey was a different matter. And then resources is kind of I won't say lunacy, because any of my shareholders listening to me will say,
Well, to me, I look at that and I think, God, I just could never go into it when I hear
yeah,
some
well,
of the things.
we got from bad to worse. I only learned about zinc from this house. You're sitting in fact, the Vatican of Irish Zinc here. This was the chairman's office, the founder of the whole revival in Irish Zinc. And I thought, and still do, that you can reduce the level of risk by selecting certain areas. But what happens is there's always risk, and the risk, you say, well, now I'll take the first one. Then the second one bites you in the ass. And if the first one doesn't, high risk means you lose most of the time. People say high return. It means high loss. And shareholders find that very hard to accept.
What was your first big success in resources?
Resources only came in '83. The first successes were mainly in the net asset model. I bought stakes in companies instead of buying shares. There were some very small companies in Ireland, and I used and borrowed money from the banks. At that time, they could borrow money from the banks. I won't mention the man's name, but I had one very good banker whose two sons, one I knew quite. I never knew they were his sons. He was very good to me. At that stage, he could lend in his own name. Didn't have to go up through all the models. Awful mess. I think I had wind damage to my house, extensions to my house, and this was to buy shares in these companies, which he couldn't allow. If that had gone up, he would have been in trouble. But they always worked. I started in about when did I start? On buying stakes. Now I had a small number of shares. I had a couple of good coups. I had the first one was Irish Pharmaceuticals, where I bought a stake in that. And the day I was trying to go into it, it was bought out. I doubled or tripled my money in that. Irish Oil and Cake Mills was a big saga, if you ever read through it, with Donald Kinsella, which I think kind of those massive. This is something that didn't happen in the dozy, cozy world of Irish. I tried to take over the company without making a bid for it. And I had a colleague, Donald Kinsella, just a wonderful, high-risk investor, is what he liked. And we bought at that stage, I bought about 20-odd% of the company. And we're the biggest shareholder, and we arrived up at the AGM. No, they agreed to see us. Very for luxury. Who are these people buying our shares? Oh, I couldn't do that. We arrived into the boardroom. I've forgotten this now, I suppose. This was 50 years ago. And Donald, anybody who knows me, he always smokes a big cigar and has a rose in his lapel. Marched into the boardroom and he looked around. They were sitting up waiting for us, and he said, when we move in here, the first thing we're going to do is paint this place. We were thrown out. They threw us out. I never even got to present. Oh, God. And we got out of it and did all right with that. Then we went on. I did about 7 of them. Most of them worked. Glenabbey I went back to. I had little shares I went back to because I thought it was a sitting duck. Now, the problem with this is, what you're going to do is you're going to realise the assets. Now, it's now called activist investors. Then it was called asset stripping. Activist investor sounds much nicer. And some of these dozy companies had loads of underutilised assets, and they'd forgotten one of the first rule of money, absolute first and only rule of money. The euro is an orphan. It has no parents, has no relatives. It has no memory, it has no conscience. It goes where it's wanted. If you are not able to make a return on that euro, it's going to move. Don't say it's not. I mean, governments don't understand that. Now, your friends with social consciences and things like that, in the long run, maybe, but in the long run, if it isn't making a viable return, it's going to go. That's the whole basis of economics. There must be. I'm mesmerized by these videos and all this stuff, and even Stripe. I'm unable to understand why Stripe is worth 140 billion. It hasn't made any money, and it's going for 11 years. How long do you give it? Now, okay, the ones that click, like Google, Facebook. I mean, Google made 80 billion in a quarter. Oh, right, I would have missed that, but. Maybe this is why Buffett's given up at 97. He can't understand it either. Modern finance is quite difficult for us to understand. So, a great believer that if the money is there, if it isn't used, somebody else is going to do it. They're going to liquidate the assets. And in the case of the clothing companies, another one we had was Ever Ready. I bought that only because it was perfectly clear the parent company in the UK was going to buy out the Irish. It was really clear to me. I didn't think that was at risk at all, and it happened. And they were languishing. I think the Irish Wire was another one. Irish Wire had a market cap of €360,000 and had lovely assets. Dock Road in Limerick. God, I'm remembering stuff I haven't remembered for 40 or 50 years. So that I enjoyed that for a while.
So it just for the listeners, companies trading below the price you would get back if you liquidated the company.
Correct. That's essentially the share price was below what the net asset says it was worth, which means you take the net asset value and you take off all debt, all long-term debt. If that price is above, in other words, the euro worth of realizable assets now, you write off all long-term assets. You don't believe buildings or anything like that. Anything, it's a gift. And they were hard to believe. I did some work, what was that, second year in Horton, and there were 11 companies on the Irish Stock Exchange. I had money to do the 11 companies, but over time I did 7 of them.
Why is it hard to stick to that model? You said that we all do it. We never sell when we're supposed to. Why is that?
Yeah, I did. He was quite good. If it got to the price you're supposed to sell it, I used to. Now, but then the Irish market was so small that you ended up, I don't believe in the diversification model that much. But, if I see something I think is right, I keep buying. So what I did is I focused my investments by money into one or two. One first, and then I got delusions of grandeur. And did 3 in 1 year, which was Seafield Genetics, Dublin Gas, and Glen Abbey for the second time. That stretched us. Now we had trouble there because the guys didn't like doing that. I ended up having to take a leave of absence from UCD for 2 years to run Seafield Genetics because I had a good bit of money into it at the time, and did it for 2 years. Got my money out, made money out of it, but I earned it. I worked for that. At this stage, I was back. Michael McCulloch recruited me back from the States to go to UCD as a junior nothing. Gave us loads of work. I was earning £19 a week. It was unbelievable. But status. My mother was delighted, Lord rest her. Well, it was status, I enjoyed it. Good people. Commerce was opening up. Business was opening up in Ireland. The 60s were a good time. This was now end of 68, beginning of 69. And then it wasn't enough to live on. And after about 6 months, word came down through Michael McCormack again. Did anybody know what discounted cash flows were? Now, kids in primary school do them now. I was the only one in the country could do them at the time. By hand. And what had happened was this place had discovered a zinc mine, big zinc deposit in Tina. You walked past the model and if you didn't see it, you can genuflect going down.
Okay, I'm interested to see that.
Yes, that's the model. They were trying to finance it and trying to finance a zinc smelter. Again, the entrepreneur in Pat Hughes didn't see the obstacles, just wanted to do all kinds of things. That one just wasn't viable, but it took a long time for us to do. But the Toronto Dominion Bank said, you can give us a responsive internal rate of return. And the people around here were going, yeah, what? Nobody, this is now early 68, 69. So I was recruited out of UCD. They just opened this building, literally, was opening it to work. The consultant was a fancy name for it. I was doing financial analysis, which I moved into the office downstairs, the room downstairs, which I'm still in. I kept it when I went back to the States. Yeah, well, it's handy. I was living in Hollybrook Road, and now, so it's a minute. It used to be a minute and a half. With traffic, it's probably 3 now, maybe. Yeah,
3 minutes with traffic. You drive?
Of course,
just like Warren Buffett drives to work just down the road. Yeah. And so you were doing that. You were doing this consulting.
I was earning more as a quote unquote consultant, about 2.5 times what I was earning in UCD, and that upset the tax man. Because they said your main source of employment should be where you earn the most. But in fact, I couldn't do that because UCD was supposed to be full-time. And anyway, it caused all kinds of issues. It got fixed. Yeah, I stayed in UCD on the staff from 68 till 88. So they wanted, I was happy enough trading around, but it was obvious even to me that if you're going to stay on the staff, they really needed people with PhDs. and needed people with doctorates from the States, because I had agreed in McCormick, but maybe others wouldn't. That's where the best business education was. And I was advised to apply for a fellowship, a very good fellowship, which I got, a Ford fellowship, which paid everything for 5 years, including, maternity, all that kind of stuff. Really good at the time. Now, doctoral students earn about 60,000 a year at Harvard to be a doctoral student. Incredible, really incredible. And because they're the ones they want. They want to get the people with specific skills. So the problem then was I'd been going out with a scar here in Ireland for about 6 or 7 years, rush things, and I decided to take the Harvard one. I got you had to apply to 5 universities and be accepted in 3 of them. Now, I had a BCom, an ME-C, and an MBA from Morton, and I was an academic. I knew I would be accepted. So the big decision was, would I apply? I applied for Chicago, Wharton, and Harvard, and I got the 3. It just, when you see the CV, it had nothing to do with any, and if I sound like I'm boasting, I'm not, because I ticked all the boxes that they were going to require. And one of the things about scholarships is the hardest one to get is the first one. Because if you get a second one, then the review committee sees it, and the second one, if you get a second one, and if you go on beyond that, they really get easier. And you're going to get things. I know for the poor unfortunates, I apologize to you if anybody young is listening, struggling. But just that's the way it is. And so I went back to, in June 1970, I was only home for about 18 months, went back to Boston in 1970. I stayed there for 2 years, 2.5 years full time. Then over the next 3 years, probably spent 3 to 6 months a year there doing the thesis. That took me a long time because I was back working here. I was back in UCD. I got involved in a consulting company, so I was busy.
What about when you were doing the consulting? What about the zinc mine and mining attracted you at that point? Where did you see
what I did was, it was unique to it. Mining didn't exist in Ireland from the late 19th century, and these places, how they were financed, the big problem, which they still can't buy into in Ireland. Without exploration, there can't be a mine. I know that's self. And even the critical minerals thing, of which the EU government is going to spend 33 billion on, presupposes you found the resources. Lithium, you haven't. Rare earths, copper, you haven't found it. And they cannot give you grants for that because it's so speculative. They'll be killed in the parliament if they lose all the money, which they're going to. So I was wondering how these guys funded them. And Pat Hughes, he had copied a TSX, Toronto Stock Exchange model, where you could raise maybe $1 million for these specky companies. He could register them in the Toronto Stock Exchange, run them, and if they did anything, then they grew. And that was the whole genesis of the entire revival of Irish mining. They had about 5 or 6 of these ones, which I succeed in doing as well, multiple horses. People always say, why? I'm not so sure if I was starting again. Yeah, I would do it that way. They came back to Ireland. They had the Tara Exploration and Development was the one that ultimately found Tara. They had Northgate, Irish Base Metals, which found Tina. They had Gortrum Mining, which found not a good copper molybdenum deposit in Tipperary. But what I watched and learned over the few years now, it was 1979 before I tried anything myself in mining, and that was private. There was a silver speculation. Myself and Kinston decided we would import a mobile silver recovery plant from the States. Didn't work. We got it wrong. We lost money. We don't like losing money. But the first one on this was, during the 70s, zinc mining went totally out of favour. Zinc exploration, the price of zinc was on the floor, wasn't viable. Totally out of. And so a lot of people were laid off. And what had happened from, say, 64 or 5 when they came back from the States until the mid-70s, a whole force of Irish experienced geologists. Suddenly, geology was a good course to do. And these were really good people, out of work. And one of them, as an example, was I was sitting with Donald Kinsler again in my house up the road, having tea, pots of tea, both with Frank pots of tea. And always an aluminium pot. That's true. And we were looking at a guy with a master's from Imperial College, really high quality geologist, experienced geologist, out of work, doing gardening, planting hedges to try and make a living. So we called him in and said, listen, what would you need for a year to set up a company and find something that we can get? That's where I came from. And we used that model all along. I was able to raise money in the early 80s because I had a bit of a track record on the stock exchange. I'd done well in 2 or 3 of them. And the first mining one was Minquest, £85,000. And I didn't know enough about anything. We put 35,000 into a company called Kenmare, which had gone bust. It's now the 5th biggest titanium manufacturer in the world, but not me. I'm long gone, for more than 20 years gone. Another one called Avoca, which listed in the stock exchange. And third one called Irish Marine Oil, I think it was. Yeah, Irish Marine Oil was another failed offshore exploration company. Again, the same model. I like to take ones that are, you're getting all their culture and knowledge and things like that, and you're paying buttons for it. So they would, and that worked very well.
And why, I mean, given how speculative it is, why, what was it that you saw that you might be able to...
Well, I could get the skills. I could raise the finance, the initial speculative finance, and the skills are important. And we would try and select the areas that we were going to look at. Like, for instance, if you're going into a country, well, the model always was, look, we'll accept higher political risk for lower geological risk. And in fact, the higher political risk has come back to bite my ass a couple of times subsequently. So some countries are very prospective for minerals, others are not. And then the models changed over time. So that's why we ended up in Africa. We ended up, I mean, if you want to find oil, you go to the Middle East. Kind of a no-brainer, but look what happens there. They take it when you find it. You want to find gold, you can go to Africa. Copper, you go to Africa. But again, they just take it when they want it. I mean, political sovereignty has, the smallest state has more power than the biggest multinational in reality.
Well, all I saw in relation to that, I know nothing really about this industry, but I saw that movie Blood Diamond. Did you see that?
I know, we had that license.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Right. And
yes, of course.
Civil War. Yeah.
Didn't like it at all. Because first, your man was far too good looking and poncy to be a mercenary. They're not like that. Secondly, I don't believe, he turned on his mercenaries. He betrayed his colleagues. I don't believe that would happen. He wouldn't do that. Because they are blood brothers, never mind blood diamonds. They really are blood brothers, and they stand together and die together. So not at all unusual. In that West Africa is very difficult. Very, very, very difficult to work. We backed out of there about 2004 or 5. We were in diamonds, a company called West African Diamonds. It's still alive. I think it's been on life support for the last 8 or 10 years. But Sierra Leone, Guinea, oh God, impossible to work. Absolutely impossible.
But even how difficult some of these projects were for you, they were very successful, some of them.
Some of them were. You see, okay, we list, the objective was, if I took money from you, I'd say to you, what I'm going to do is, we're not going to spend it on overhead. This building doesn't have huge fancy overheads. No fountains in the corridors, unless a leak. Minimal overhead, and use good skills, but put the money in the ground, and I will try and list it so you have, I have friends who've made more money out of the resources than I have, because I get stuck in. I can't get out that easily. We still got 4. And that was it, and it worked very well. We knew how to list them on junior exchanges because of my stock exchange stuff, which was unusual in Ireland now at the time. This place never listed anything in Ireland. This only listed in Canada, never even listed in the UK, because their background was Canadian, though they were Irish. And we listed from, say, mid-80s until we stopped. About 15 companies were listed in the stock exchange, all highly speculative. We had 3 or 4 big hits in 19 years. Then you lose money for the other 15 years.
What's a big hit? How many times?
Like 100 times your money.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We found a diamond mine. That was good. We found that was the big one. I'm only showing off. Don't ask me about the other hundreds and hundreds
in
of dry
in
holes.
terms of, okay, so 100 times your money, maybe 3 or 4 times, but in terms of all the money that was invested into everything over time, do you know roughly?
You know, I'm afraid to do the numbers because I think maybe, if you get a huge spread, then reality will tip in that it's a negative sum game, that you lose more money than you make over time. For my investors, those who are, you never make a profit till you sell. There's bulls, bears, stags, and pigs. Pigs are the ones that are greedy. And most of us are just greedy. We're so good that when it goes up 10 times, well, I wait until it goes up 20 times. And then you sell and shit, it goes up. You say, should have done that. And you buy back in. And you keep doing it until you lose your money. Because most of these, I still have ones that bought at maybe 2 and 6 and all money went up to £6, and I still have them more than 50 years later. Not worth the stamp that they send out annual reports to me.
But even Ben Graham, who you talked about earlier, who was the kind of
the guru, he's the god.
Yeah, his best investment was Geico, which he never sold, and he made so much money over his lifetime.
If he kept it, and that's in fact Buffett. Buffett doesn't sell. Now there's big consternation at the moment because the new guy, they are selling a lot of their equities, and they have hundreds of billions of money. So it's an interesting one. I don't know why. He invested long term. He bought management, he bought people, and he bought projects, and he bought brands. He worked it out, and it's not bad, and he's probably right on that, yeah. In general, if you invest in equities, you have a very good return over 40 or 56 years, and you just do if you look at the numbers. There's nothing messes it over 100 or 120 years, nothing. So most people would have done it. If we'd have kept, we sold the diamond mine. We were joint venture with the British, battle royals, as always happens. Resources has major battles. You have to be prepared to have. Success tends to have a number of parents. Failures always an offer. Always. So the parents think they all own it. You get about 200% of the owners want to own things. And we sold to a company called Lundin Group out of Canada. Fabulous. They do the right things. They don't do exploration at all, but they wait until it has a bankable feasibility study. So in other words, they break the debt, but it's just going to build it. It'll take 18 months to 2 years to come to production, and they can see dividends. They don't do the valley of death that all companies go through, except in mining, it can be 15 years. So it's very hard to see. You need to make 100 times your money or something like that. Zinc was good to me. I had a thing called Conroy in the late 80s. That's Conroy, yeah. That was the third one. That was good to us. We made a lot of money on that. Then proceeded to piddle it away over time.
Why did you get into whiskey?
A very good question. I was still speculating on companies, and I was getting bigger and bolder in the early 80s. And when I was at Harvard, I'd written a paper on Irish, because in America you have to write term papers, and I'd sick and tired of them over the years. And a professor of marketing said, "Hey, I love Irish whiskey. What's happening to it?" I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about it. So I wrote a paper on sales of Irish whiskey in the US, which in 1888 were 6 to 8 million cases. In 1968, there were 270,000. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. I'm amazed. I've said it as we had 60% of the market in 1850. 60%. No, not in 1850, in about 1800. And by 1966, we had 2% of Scotch sales because we wouldn't adapt the column technology. Just wouldn't. There's two technologies. The pots that you know and love. If you're going to Teeling, you'll see them in there. Very traditional. Jack is very traditional. And then there's the columns, big industrial operations, simply because it's cheaper to make this way, continuous process. Pots are not as efficient.
Why didn't we adapt it?
Wouldn't. Thought it wasn't whiskey because, in fact, it's very high strength alcohol from the pots, about 94.5% pure alcohol, 189 proof, and most of the flavors are left in the liquid. Whereas the pots, the flavors of the impurities, because of the process of reflux and the pots up and down, goes into it's the difference between, say, a single malt, which has strong flavors, and a blended whiskey or single grain, which might be nicer, same alcoholic strength, but not the same flavors. They wouldn't do it. Never did it. None of the three, the kings of Irish whiskey in Dublin, biggest in the world, never made it. Jameson, Powers, Rowe. Rowe is the biggest in the world, biggest distillery. They were the biggest distilleries in the world for anything. Rum, brandy, schnapps, gin, vodka. They were the biggest.
And what would it have changed for them? Would it have been a bit like Coca-Cola changing their taste or you know, or
That's
something.
their belief. They called this new stuff the silent spirit. And they died. Simple as that. And so I thought I should build a distillery at the time. And the problem was, at that time, the big problem was I was a student. I was broke. I was a graduate student, so I was old, but I had an even bigger problem. I was married. But 16 years later, I built the two. And the reason, why whiskey? I always thought was a huge opportunity in Irish whiskey because it can only be made in Ireland. Can't be made anywhere else. I mean, self-obvious, and people don't see that. Like the Bulgarian company said, would you make me Irish whiskey in Bulgaria?
So there's a competitive advantage just built in by the fact.
Also, it was the best. And there is no doubt about it that it is smooth and mellow. In 1601, Queen Elizabeth I, her warrant to Berry Brothers and Nuds, and I prefer Irish Aquavit. It is more mellow and less fiery on the stomach. I don't know why Jameson wastes money in advertising. That's all they have to say. She said it in 1601. It is. It's smooth and mellow. It has to be the climate. I don't understand why it differs from Scotch. I really don't. But 16 years later, I was back. I was in UCD at that time. I was nearly finished in UCD because I had a lot of companies going, a lot of resource companies. And I decided I'd try and take over Irish Distillers. Here comes the delusion of grandeur. But I lost my nerve. I lost my nerve. In this case, wrongly. I had a couple of students in the States to do the feasibility. I wouldn't do them in Ireland because, Chinese walls are for Chinese, not for Irish people. Information flows all the time. And the company was being very badly managed. It was a monopoly. Government set up a monopoly in 66. But by 86, it was a mess. Grossly overmanned, mainly at administration level.
And it was a government monopoly. How did that work?
It was a listed company, but they forced them into a single company. Bushmills, Powers, Jameson, and Cork Distillery.
And why create a monopoly rather than?
Because the idea was it was going to die if they left it where it was. There wasn't a marketing manager. No marketing. Not that bad. Great Northern Distillery might be much different. They had no professional management, really professional management now, who weren't family and things like that. They were still in the 19th century. And I thought I could do it. Now, I had a few problems. When I had Seafield Gentex, a couple of ministers came after me because I was closing down a company and threatened all kinds of things on me. And they can. Tax investigations, police investigations, all kinds of things. The result is I kept the company open for 10 or 12 weeks that I shouldn't have. It cost 250,000 of equity. It was our money. It wasn't the state's money that you're losing. You lose your equity first. You don't lose the bank's money. And so I looked at it. I thought I could do something. It was going to cost 200 million now, 1986. That was a lot. They needed about 20 million of equity, and I could have raised 180 million in jump bonds through Merrill Lynch. I could get the 20 million. No, it wasn't all mine. You get all those that would have been backed by stockbrokers because they had ridden on the 7 or 8 companies I'd be involved in. Their shareholders had done well.
What about management of the company? Did you replace the management or?
Yeah, I'm a great believer you can buy managers.
And you never thought about stepping in as a CEO?
No, not CEO. What would I know about it? Well, of course, what do I know about money? And the answer is nothing. Even less about exploration. This has probably been proven. No, my job is to put the things together. It's not to run them.
Did something about the fact that whiskey is a little bit like mining in the sense that there's a kind of longer term?
That's exactly right. That's what made it easy for me and for the guys who backed me in 86. It's at least 10 years, whereas mining is longer, but 10 years from start to serious break even, if you're lucky. Most of the new startups haven't realised that. Well, they realise it now when they're in it, but a lot of them, it's vanity projects and it's private equity, so they survive. I got options. It's kind of innovative in Ireland. I bought options from company. One was 15% options and another one was I could have got maybe 28% in total. I then backed off. I said, what will happen is the former Taoiseach was on the board. They get an investigation, cause a strike from the workers. And after 8 or 9 weeks, the banks were done scared. They pulled the plugs, so I could have lost the money. That was my belief. I'm probably right. They had 1,100 workers and they needed 3. Maybe 800 male redundancies wouldn't have gone down too well in Ireland in the mid to late 80s.
You said there you lost your nerve, but you do have a stomach Clearly, because to be able to go into these industries that take so long to pay off, when you don't necessarily know whether they're going to pay off for sure, where does that come from?
The ability to do it.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you have to have that. That's maybe the difference between people. I think uncertainty. So in other words, I'm sounding like a lecturer now. The four things for an entrepreneur: the idea, the vision. Vision's the wrong word. It really is an idea that you really do believe in. That's why I'm not a great believer in social entrepreneurship, not a believer in government entrepreneurship. Don't believe in cooperative entrepreneurship because some person has to take responsibility. This is mine. I'm going to see it through. I believe in it, and I'm going to persuade you to give me your money. And I could do that. So firstly is a vision that you believe in. And the trouble with it is you don't care what the banks say to you because they don't. And it's happening now. I see people looking at things and say, gobshites. No, they just don't see. And they don't. They really don't see what you see. And you can't persuade them. They're different people. So first thing is the vision, which isn't that easy. Second thing is the ability to get resources. Everybody always says, I have no money. Sure. All right, money, technology. You might have to rent it, lease it, or hire it, buy it in with a worker. And thirdly is employees. And I've never had problems there. I've always thought I could hire them. And I think the reason for that is if they see that you're putting a lot of skin in the game, never mind skin, arms and legs, and have belief in it, they'll do it. The third one is fascinating. It's uncertainty, not risk. I studied that at Wharton. I was mesmerized. There's a little book, and I can never remember its name, Difference Between Risk and Uncertainty. And Rumsfeld said it. Uncertainty is the unknown unknowns. Risk, you can insure against risk, more or less. It is known unknowns. But uncertainty, you have no idea what's going to happen to you. Yeah. Drilling a hole in West Africa, you really don't. You think you do. You try and cut it. Not many people like that. They don't like uncertainty. And if you can handle uncertainty and others can't, you don't understand. So I don't understand a lot of professions at all. I have very little time for them because
well, I heard I had read about that a number of years ago, but essentially, kind of a lot of the reason why the differences in price and value can show up in stock markets is because Wall Street are the kind of consensus investors like certainty. They like to know what will be there in 10 years' time. And they confuse that with their loss of capital as such
Why would you accept uncertainty? Uncertainty, you're going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. You are. And that's not nice. And there again, why would banks accept uncertainty? They probably shouldn't because they're investing other people's money, widows and orphans' money. None of the resource companies, I would tell people, it was being reported to me, there was somebody here in the last few days and said, oh, I remember you told me all those years ago, a woman rang up and said, this is in a company in the 80s. God, shows what this fella's age was. I couldn't believe it. A woman rang me from a telephone box. She says, my kids' fees are due and I put your money into this company and you said it was going to go up, which of course I didn't. I said it might. And I said to her, sell the shares, which, a chairman shouldn't say that. Tony O'Reilly did it once with one of his companies and it was bedlam. He said, if you don't like what we're doing, sell the shares. And that's correct. In this case, she shouldn't have been in that investment. She couldn't afford to lose her kids' fees. It's not for widows and orphans. And, so I understand banks and people like that. You're quite right. I mean, the consensus if you have a pension fund, one of the stockbrokers here, they want you to diversify, low risk, fair enough. But if you're a startup, it doesn't work that way. So idea, resources, uncertainty, being able to handle it. And the final one is you just need risk, energy, determination to make the damn thing work. Because it won't. Things go wrong all the time. They really do. And what I like about the fact is things go wrong that can't go wrong. They just can't go wrong. Physics and engineering says that, and they do. We bought the brewery up and down. We had 1,800 on-off switches for pumps. Pumps go on and off. So we bought another 800 to change it. The two bloody things wouldn't talk to each other. And they're only pumps. And so we had to rewrite a huge computer program, probably cost a couple of $100,000 to get them to talk to each other. There was no reason in the world why they wouldn't work together. None. They're beside each other. Same things. Go on and off. All they do is go on and off. But it's great. I think that's part of the joy of it. So, but you certainly need have those factors.
Well, no. Well, tell me a bit about people, because you were talking about resources, and you said I can understand why they see you. You're putting it together. You're putting all your own money into it. You're excited about it. It's kind of an infectious enthusiasm. How do you find the right people? Do you look at track record?
You look at
How
all
do you
those
find them?
things, but you can't. You know, I had one situation. I got involved in a company, and I did well out of that too. It was private. But then they were expanding really fast, and they'd hired a lot of people, and they seemed to have 10 good managers out of 10. Now I was running Glen Abbey at the time, and I'd hired 8. 3 were good, 2 were iffy, and 3 were bad. And I'd say anybody who listened to me said the same things like that. I sold the shares because the 10 were supposed to be good. The company didn't survive. Probably one of the few times I sold at the top in anything. I think it probably was. But that was the reason I sold, because everybody he hired was good, and they're not. Nothing wrong with them. But getting people who accept your infectious is good, and really good where we are. And I can see it even with the boys. If you're there, I mean, Cooley, we got people in from the Cooley Peninsula who'd never really worked in this before. And a couple of people who'd worked in the original Chemical Cho alcohol plant. I brought back the technical skills from the States, a guy called David Hines from Clontarf, who was doing the MBA in the States, chemical engineer. He came back, and he's still with me. He's still the director of G&D. And he could hire. He knew how to make whiskey. He knew how to make really good whiskey. He never made it until then. But he won Best Distillery in the year 9 years after we started. It was incredible. He's just very good. And our whiskies are really good. Nothing to do with me. I couldn't make it if I needed it to drink. And but likewise, you got good geologists. As I said, here was a guy with a master's from Imperial College. Fabulous experience. He had found mines, and he was working as a gardener. That was a waste of skills. We'd be looking now at things like that. I got a guy came in, joined me, ex-De Beers guy in African diamonds, which became Botswana diamonds. He's still running it now. He's an expert, a really expert in diamonds. We're kind of pivoting towards copper. We'll need help because he's world-class in diamonds. I mean, one of the very best in the world. But that's different for copper, totally different.
Did you ever think about the size of projects? So obviously the bigger the project and the more money you're putting into something, the kind of higher nominal returns that you might get from it. Was that ever a consideration, or was there...
I worked on small ones. I always attacked the littlest ones, worked your way up. As I say, Irish Distillers would have been, I think, a step too far. And then I stopped, and I went into, what happens, I didn't do that. Instead of that, I bought Chemical Cho in Dundalk. And it had columns kind of, it was one of these, it had been making methanol for petrol from bad potatoes in the Cooley Peninsula. But it was there, and it had an operation. I bought it for buttons, literally for buttons. And brought in pots from the north of Ireland, second-hand pots from the north of Ireland, and we were up and running in about 2.5 years.
What year was that?
86 I bought it, kind of got control of it at the beginning of 87, it was closed. First distillations was Easter Sunday 1989. There's a bottle of it somewhere there. Actually is, yeah.
And at that stage, so as you said, there was this kind of monopoly in Irish whiskey, but it wasn't... the demand for Irish whiskey globally had kind of gone downhill.
Yeah, it was only about 2 million cases at that time.
So
and
even though there was a competitive advantage that you saw that, well, it can only be made in Ireland, if no one wanted it, how did you? What was your bet there? Because
they were making the wrong products. I was going to make the products that were successful in Scotch. I was going to make a Glenfiddich single malt, and I was going to make a J&B or Ballantyne's blend. Irish whiskey only started to make blends in the 60s. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
So you sold just because it wasn't a brand of whiskey that you had. It was a
Well, I had some old brands, but I was going to make the products first. The original idea was we were going to make a single malt, which we did, which was Tyrconnell. We were going to make, we wouldn't have had anything, remember, for 3 or 4 years, at which stage I had bought Kilbeggan at that stage. So we had the old Locks and Kilbeggan brands, and make a blended whiskey, which would be very similar to the Scottish, light and sweet. We only had 2 pots, not 3 pots on Cooley. So I was going to ride on that, and hopefully being Irish will be different. Didn't work.
But you don't drink yourself, right?
So, never tasted whiskey,
And so So, was there anything? Was it just the fact that you just saw the market for it, and you
Yeah,
just
but you must have heard the story. I'm sorry, people who would have heard it. I was managing Glen Abbey, who's made 50% of all the ladies' knickers in Ireland, and I never wore them.
I haven't heard you
You
say
never
that
heard that?
before. No, but
But it's
good.
true. I have to make products that people want to buy. It doesn't care what I like. That's why I'm not a great believer in these tasting panels and all this kind of crap. I was making it at that stage. I was making it for the new Irish whiskey markets, which were Italy and Spain. They weren't the UK, even though we broke our heart in the UK. But I got it wrong. I was too early. None of the markets that are growing now were there. But about 2000, it changed. Young people started to drink brown spirits. They started to drink bourbon. And they started to drink Irish because Irish is sweeter than Scotch, and still is. And that's what's happening around the world. Why I'm a great believer in the future of Irish. I'm probably a bigger believer now than I was 56 years ago. Christ.
Did it take the others? So Jameson and Paris. Did it take them long to kind of catch up to
They
this?
didn't. They were kind of stuck in a mindset, but they were bought in '88 by Pernod, which I thought was a ridiculous thing because I thought it should have been somebody with great marketing, pretty like Grand Metropolitan or other than all of which are gone. And Pernod turned out to be a superb custodian of the brands. They've done brilliantly with Jameson. I wish the hell they didn't. I wish they were much worse. They're still about 80% of the Irish whiskey market. If anything, it's growing. Because they're able to go into new markets like India, places like that, southern, southwest, South Africa and West Africa, which is growing very fast as well. They're just really very good from a pastis company. It's weird to think that they were so good. French companies in international marketing, you might say, well, that's an oxymoron. And it wasn't. They are superb market company. I think ultimately they'll be bigger than Jameson. They'll be bigger than Diageo, second biggest in the world. They're the second biggest in the world now. The Americans are all wiped out. They wiped out the Americans, all gone except Diageo.
When did you start making money then in the whiskey business?
About 2003 or 4, which was a long time. But I was used to it. So, I mean, there was great kind of...
So 20 years.
We started to sell own label whiskey when we weren't able to sell in the 90s. We made good money on own label whiskey. So we were the only own label at the time. Well, there was nobody else. There was also Irish Distillers, absolutely nobody else. And they wouldn't do that. Why would they sell cheap whiskey? They want to get premium prices, which they've succeeded in doing brilliantly. But we were selling to about 45 own labels, and that was good money because we had low overhead situation. I mean, we were able to get cash flow out of that. Cash flow as much as anything else that we turned over stuff. We kept distilling as long as we could. We closed for a couple of years. We cut back. They go dark. Distilleries go dark when there's a recession. Always recessions. And we started suddenly, at this stage now, Jack had joined me in 2001.
Jack's your son?
Yeah, he joined and he kind of got into it around 2000 because, I mean, it was struggling and we were dealing with all kinds of things. So he came into, actually, he's another Benjamin Graham believer. He was investment finance. He did his master's in that. And Stephen joined in 2006, kind of selling stuff in the UK. And then the board decided that let Jack be the MD. I think, serendipity, he got it when it was running well. Interest took off in the States. And it started. Now, I think Jameson had laid the foundations from 1989, but it was American driven, still is. Jameson went from 30,000 cases to 5.5 million cases. That's nice in the States in 23. It's probably about the same now. Big recession. So it started the boom. We were doing so well about 2005 or 6 or 7 that we were selling each year about half of the stock we had, and you can't do that because it takes a minimum of 3 years. I mean, it was a conundrum. It really was. And the stuff you were selling is not much you had in stock either. That's a big problem for distilleries. And then people started to try and buy us. Grants, which is Tullamore Dew now 3 times. Irish Distillers tried to buy us in the early 90s and close us down. That was a big battle. That took a lot of financial manipulation. We were kind of good at that. A lot of money from people to keep it going. The banks called the loans twice. There was one banker. I hope it was still burning. You're wrong. I hope you are. No forgiveness.
You were saying earlier about how money was a kind of motivator for you at the start of your career. At the kind of time that you were in the whiskey business, did you feel settled in a way from that standpoint, secure?
Well, I had done well on the on some of the resource companies, and some other investments had done okay. So I wasn't. I don't need to have 500 million. In fact, I never wanted to live outside of Northside Dublin. So I don't need a boat. I don't play golf. I don't back horses or own horses. Never did. No interest. And I don't sail, which is like tearing up 20 euro notes in the shower. None of those things. So I don't have aspirations for things at all. That's why I don't have. I have a nice house, good house, but that's one. I've won half of it. The wife is the other half. She probably thinks she owns it all. She probably does. But so yeah, with more achievement. I mean, the whiskey thing now was 1980, 83 when we started to set up these things. Was I was teaching first commercial about entrepreneurship, and you really had to do it. If I was true to myself, which is the important thing, could I do it? Now, this was a big gamble to take on, genuinely a big gamble to take on a monopoly and see could we do it. And we nearly did it in Cooley. Cooley didn't get there. Jack has done so with Teeling. He's established that. So he went on, and the two of them set up. We got a very good price. The other thing is I had raised money from most of the guys who had followed me in resources, had given me money over the years. And we had some of the money for 24 years. And they used to only get, if they came to the AGM, they got 2 bottles of whiskey. They got nothing. If they didn't come, they didn't get it. But so I had good attendance. But they got old. I have 85, and I was a young Turk. 85 and 90-year-olds. You know, we had to have, this is true, we had to have the AGM on the ground floor. They couldn't get upstairs. So when I got a very good offer from Jim Beam, it was a negotiated offer to be a good offer. I gave it to people, and some of them said, we don't want to sell. How am I going to do with the money? You know, they were old and they didn't need the money. An incredible guy was given a check for $250,000. He says, what am I going to do with this? I prefer to leave it in there. So we sold that. Beam then, in 2 years later, sold everything. They sold themselves to Suntory for 21 billion cash dollars. Suntory have their big Japanese, very good company. They're still growing the bourbon. They're not that interested in Irish. They haven't grown the company, which is a great disappointment to me. We've put blood, sweat, and tears into that damn thing.
A lot of the time, when I'm sitting across from someone like you who's had a kind of long career in entrepreneurship, there's a kind of a sense that I get that there's been a lot of pain along the way, and they wear it a lot of the time, no matter how successful they've been. I'm not getting the same sense at all from sitting across from you today. And I'm just wondering, was there ever a kind of a moment for you, or even a kind of a long period of time, where you felt like it wasn't working, or you weren't, it was too painful?
I think in every single venture we've been, you've had this moment where you say, why did I do that? And all you can do is continue. When you're in a hole, stop digging. I don't know about that. We kept digging. Because there was no way out, because the value of a half-built hole is zero. So you'd write off everything. I've been lucky in that strong support. There's no doubt about it. You need strong kind of family support. I don't think we've known each other, my wife, since we're 17. So I don't think she knew any better. If she'd had another life and suddenly finds this crap, actually, I think that might be true. And her father was a little business, a shop and things themselves. So I think that helped. I think that's important. So she put up with an awful lot. Yes, we had serious problems a couple of times. As I say, when they called the bank loans, I was saved by, I had to get back from Namibia in 36 hours. I was saved by two customers who put money in, and a couple of investors. We had to put more of our own money in, which was a struggle at the time to put it in. And the banker came up with Anglo-Irish Bank. So I don't have a bad word to say about Sean Fitzpatrick at all. Saved. We probably wouldn't, but it was very difficult at the time. Resource companies, the listed ones, you see, you could let them go bust if they're losing. They tend not to die. They're funny things. In that people, if you have a listing of the stock exchange, people want the listing, they want access to your shareholder base and things like that. In fact, I'm going through some of that at the moment. One has just gone to new directors, Arkle, which was old Connemara, one of the original Irish Zinc explorers. That's gone into uranium in Namibia again, back to Namibia and been. And there'll be more of that. It needs to be regenerated. I think the option is how far are you prepared to go if it's going, and it will go wrong. There is no doubt that these projects will go wrong. There must be the odd one that doesn't go wrong. I've never had one.
Were there many investors, and I'll use the word unsophisticated, but I don't really mean that. Like that lady that spoke to you.
She shouldn't have been there.
Were there many of those moments over time where you lost people's money and you felt like...
Yes, it's awful. It really is awful. And if you ever read any of the stuff I write in reports saying this is not for widows and orphans, this is a high risk meaning high chance of loss, not high chance of gain, high chance of loss. And you would say, look, we don't want them because they're troublesome. What happens is, if I make money for shareholders on the stock exchange now, the whiskey is different. If I make money for shareholders, you will notice we don't have any shareholders in the whiskey business now. None at all, only family. It's because the investors are brilliant. When I lose money for investors, it's because I'm a crook. No doubt. It's been discussed here yesterday for me. Exact same thing. Well, you didn't tell me I could lose money. I did. And I don't know what they should make it more obvious, but it's very hard to make it more obvious. Now, greed is the one, but there's only two investment motivations, fear and greed. It really is. I mean, the stock exchange runs on greed, totally. And then one day, like rabbits, they all wake up and that's going to happen. And they all run for the exit. Donald Kinster was brilliant. We're saying, look, investors are like the situation. We're going across the desert. You have to stretch on this one. We were going across the sand in the desert, and there in front of us, there's this bar, big open doors. In we go to the bar, we're slugging beer, the thirst. Then you want to go to the toilet, but you can't go out there, and there's only one little narrow door. You can't get out. They're all trying to get out at the same time, and that's what happens. It's exactly what happens. People, I think that's why they suppose they buy lottery tickets, isn't it? I suppose it's somewhat the same. But you do not want unsophisticated investors investing in high-risk exploration. And the stock exchange tries to pass rules on AIM and things like that tries to avoid it. But, they get a tip in a pub. They get a tip in the golf course. And now they're kind of sophisticated. You don't mind those. But, I mean, a woman with kids putting that was wrong. But I never didn't know the woman from Adam, still never met the woman. I hope she's all right and that the kids got their education.
I'm sure they did. I hope you won't mind me saying this, and we can cut it out if you tell me to, but you've just turned 80 years of age. And I'm just wondering, is there kind of a secret to your energy? Like, we've been sitting here for probably an hour at this stage. You haven't dwindled at all. In fact, I think maybe you're getting more animated
Probably,
as we go.
I usually get red in the face. That's why I put off the heat. Yeah. The engine keeps going. I'm blessed. I have no idea why. Always. And absolutely blessed. That has to be some medical have to tell me why. I was blessed with a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm. I have a daughter who might be worse than me. She's chasing bats all around the world. She's a scientist. She's not in business. And limitless energy. Absolutely limitless. Now, one of the problems at 80, I do get a bit tired. And bits are falling off. So I'm blessed with that. That's serendipity. And it's like the ability to handle uncertainty. Yeah, I can handle that. And I don't know why. I didn't do anything to do it. I don't even know how to teach it.
Were you intentional at all about your health? I suppose you don't drink. I don't know whether that was a conscious health decision or...
I came back from the States. He had a couple of beers in the States, when you shouldn't have in the States. I was heavy and I decided I had to get fit. It was nearly 28 to 30, mortality around that age. So I decided I'd go back and play rugby, or go to play rugby. I'd been involved in the rugby club, but never played. So I only started to play rugby at 30 and played till I was 62.
What?
Yeah, that's why I'm broken up. I'm broken up.
What position?
I was a prop.
At 62?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was bigger. I mean, a prop doesn't do anything. At the levels I was playing at, with blind guys, fellas with one arms, one legs. I was playing at the 9th team in Clontarf now. It wasn't the best, but it was very good. But you had to stay fit. I lost a lot of weight to get fit and stayed fit for a long number of years. You had to. If you're going to do these things, you do need to be a bit fit. If you're going to take lots of... I travelled unmercifully. That's why, again, you needed a supportive wife. Our parents were very good. Some years would have 100 flights, which is awful. I couldn't do a tenth of that now. I wouldn't. Over and back to London would be a lot of those. And that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And we backed off of that, which means we're not so good with the exploration companies now. You've got to be on the ground in London. You've got to be talking to the brokers. You've got to be talking to institutions. And myself and Jim Finn, David Horgan, my colleague, died during the year. He was good at doing it, but he couldn't do it all.
There is, and I don't get the sense that you felt maybe it was a sacrifice at the time, but doing all the travelling, there is a kind of sacrifice that goes with it.
You see, you're too young to understand it, yes, but there is definitely. You would have, as I say, you really do need supportive. My wife couldn't have done it because she was working, but her father and mother were very good. I see now there's 8 grandchildren who live around me. We all live in Clontarf. 8 families in the same road. And yes, the fact that I don't travel, you have more time for them and things like that. Yeah, I was never a great one for holidays either, which is not right. No, because I got to go and see beautiful places for the exploration. Beautiful, beautiful places. Far better than I can get in a 5-star hotel, 5-star holiday. No. Things like Lake Uyuni in Bolivia, like the Kalahari. It's magnificent. It's just really beautiful, beautiful places. In Iraq. I was in Iran. I was in Iraq. We were going to, looking at something, we went to see a copper project. It was about 5 hours drive. It was Iran. And we had to go through a thing called the Lut Desert, which nobody in the West knows. Iran has this 2,000-kilometre desert, massive bloody thing. So we had to drive across it. They didn't build a road across it until the 50s. And we were going to the far side, to the Afghan border, where there was big copper things. We were driving along the one road, and we had drivers. I was okay, we did it. It was very tiring, and I was fit. Oh, I met. You'd stop every hour and had to have tea. Chai.
Yeah.
And we're coming back, and in the 4-wheel drive, there was a baseball bat. I'm looking at this thing, what's this for? So I got somebody, the interpreter asked me, oh, well, he says, that's for the camels. I said, what do you mean, that's for the camels? Because in the Lut Desert, they had to have camels. So what would happen during the day, the tarmac would heat from the sun. At night, the tarmac releases the heat slower than the sand. So the camels would come and lie in the road. So what he had was he'd get out and he hit the camels on the nose with the baseball bat to get them to move. Well, you had to. Well, we couldn't go on the sand. That's what that was for. I mean, you don't find those things now on kind of TUI holidays. No, that's what I remember. And we went to see magnificent thing about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning one morning. I was brought to see it by a man who's still alive. He's in his 90s. What the hell is the sapphire? No. What's they call the stuff that you get? It's a leaf. It begins with an S.
Whereabouts is it?
Well, it comes from Spain now, but the real stuff comes from. It's a flower.
I'm not going to know the answer to this.
I beg your pardon. It's oh God, I have some down below, but it has to be wonderful. It has to be harvested in the hour before dawn by virgins. Because what happens when the sun comes up, the flower opens. It's hugely expensive. What the hell is it called? Anyway, I think about it.
We'll find it. I'll put it in the show notes for after, for anyone who's
So,
interested.
that was great to see things like that.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky with that.
So it was more kind of, you didn't want to lie on a beach as such. You wanted to see, you have an interest in the world and in different places.
Yeah, look, I was blessed, or I was very lucky. Did a lot of good things. I just come back last year now, from 2 weeks in India, 2 weeks in China for the whiskey. And we'll go back to China shortly. Fascinating, but you only saw. I'm minded these people bring you to see certain things. You get some time off, and fabulous.
But even with the sacrifice and the traveling and all of that, you still managed to keep a very kind of healthy family life and everything. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, we're close, thank God. And so far, the kids, the youngest is 45, 49 and 52. As I say, they all live within 400 yards of me. which is great to get your children to come back from the States. All of them are away at various stages. And the two boys have Teeling whiskey in Newmarket. Emma's UCD professor, ex-NIH from the States, came back from the States. And they've all got children. So blessed with that. And we will see, my wife is very good with it. I give her credit. She still works the same age as me, but she still helps and goes around with them all the time. In fact, we have them out this afternoon for 4 of them for dinner, early dinner, which is good to do. It's good to race. It's half term, they're there. So, yeah, I did our best. I would do more of it now that I'm not traveling as much. And we've only about 4 companies now. We used to have more.
Will you ever retire?
What would they do? I think I could do it, and I think it will happen. I think it will happen. I'm doing less. We have a good management team in Great Northern. It took a while to build it. Good team. I would hope that the 2 boys and Emma, who basically control Great Northern, I hope they take it over and do it. They will, I think. They have different views than me and different things. That's fine. I'm kind of now an ambassador is really all I do. I don't do any real management. We have a team up there that does. I would probably need to expand it because the industry is going through a bad recession at the moment. But I might have one other thing to do, or maybe 2. But but they'd be only playthings, literally. It'd be stuff. As I say, I don't own a horse, so I might as well own something else. I can lose money in a horse or lose money in a boat. I can easily lose money in a project.
John Teeling, it's been a pleasure being here today and having this conversation. I could talk to you all day. I almost don't want to leave, but I know you've got another meeting coming up now soon and everything else. So thank you very much for doing it, and thank you very much for joining me.
It's my pleasure. I hope it comes out all right now, that I don't get myself into too much trouble. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Good
Chad.
luck. Bye-bye.